Assalamu alaikum, everybody, and hello, everybody. My name is Kian, and I'm going to talk today about some Islamic concepts and some Islamic ideals that I have learned about over the course of my studies over the last few years and over the course of some spiritual experiences that I've had. I hope you will enjoy. So, the first thing I wanted to talk about is basically the concept of what what makes a person wise and what makes a person foolish, and what how that's related to humility in Islam, and how God exalts people who are humble and he puts people lower who are arrogant. And both arrogance and humility are related to wisdom and foolishness. And a wise person is safe from all kinds of disasters, and a foolish person is always on the edge of losing everything. So, how I'm going to put this is I'm going to start with talking about two characters from history and how they were remembered in history based on, how humble and how arrogant they were, and how they were remembered, how the wise man was remembered, and how the fool was remembered. So, let's start with the foolish person. One of the most foolish people in history, maybe the most foolish, was someone named Nimrud. He was a tyrant, and he was someone who basically challenged Allah, and the way he was dealt with was very, very bad. He was a king over a nation, and he decided that he was going to gather his people and he was going to kill Allah, the Lord, the Creator, the one who created everything, and the one who has power over everything. He thought that he was so powerful he could kill Allah, so he gathered his people and told them to shoot arrows into the sky and kill Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what happened? I mean, look at the way he was dealt with. Allah made a fool of him. He was so arrogant he thought he could challenge him. He shot the arrows came back, and they came back with blood on him. So he rejoiced and celebrated. Oh, we have killed Allah. He was fooled into even thinking he won this battle, that there was no way of winning. He was celebrating. And then how Allah killed him. He didn't even send a lightning bolt or some kind of powerful destruction. What he did, he sent a mosquito, and the mosquito went up his nose, and it basically went to his brain and started biting his brain over and over again, and he couldn't rest. So he asked his servant to hit him over the head with a club to knock him out so he could rest for some periods of time. And the mosquito kept biting him, and he couldn't take it anymore. So he kept on telling him to knock him out, and eventually the servant hit him so hard that he killed him. And that's how he was remembered. He was just, if you ever watched the movie Troy, it's literally exactly what, even though this was not like a real good example, because in this case, I mean, like, Brad Pitt or Achilles was wrong, like doing something wrong, but he basically said all you're going to be remembered as is the fool who thought he killed Achilles. You're going to wander the underworld, deaf, like dumb and blind. That's all you're going to be. You're going to remember the fool who thought he killed Achilles. This is the same thing. This is all Nimrod, for all his power he had on the earth and his kingdom and his nation. The only way he was remembered after he basically decided that he was so powerful he could challenge God with his foolishness is the fool who thought he killed Allah, and that's how he died, and that's how he's going to be remembered in history. And if you know, in Canada, and in high school or in elementary school, when you want to call someone really stupid, you call them a Nimrod. This is actually what you call them. This is when you want to call someone the epitome of stupid. I don't think a lot of people know where the history of that name comes from, but it's Nimrod. You're calling them a Nimrod. You're calling them like a complete, absolute idiot. So even kids insult each other nowadays by using his name, and that's how he's remembered. That's his legacy, and his next life is going to be terrible. He's going to be amongst the people on the fire. So that's Nimrod. Nimrod is, this is the fool. This is how the fool is remembered. He's a joke in history, and it's because he was arrogant. He was arrogant, and he fooled himself into do something, the ultimate foolishness. And then you want to talk about a wise person, and I'm going to use the example of a prophet, David, and a very revered figure in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. He was a man who was very humble, and his humility made him grateful. It led to him being very grateful. And if you look at some of the things that they say about Dawood, Dawood used to worship a lot. He used to worship one third of every night. He used to fast every other day, and he used to make all his money with his. Like, he used to eat from what his own hands earned. And he was a king, so he did not eat except for what his own hands earned. He was a very like and he was a very like a very strong figure and person who was devoted to Allah and who did his own work with his own hands, and who was a king. And before he was a king, he was a warrior, and he wasn't a no warrior, but he as a smaller man killed a giant because of his trust in God. A big man, Jalut, or what's the word in English? Jalut, Goliath. He killed Goliath, and he did that with trust in God as a smaller man than Goliath. And so now, the thing that you want to look at how Dawood's character was, is that you can see his wisdom. And one of the things that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about him is that he talked about his, like, when Dawood was trying to praise Allah, and he said, "Oh Allah, how can I thank you? What even my thankfulness comes from you." And then Allah said, "Now you have thanked me." Basically, you have thanked me correctly, because in Islam it's an understood concept that everything bad you have comes from yourself, and everything good you have comes from Allah. So when you have something, bad is a strange word. Sometimes you might have a disaster happen to you, but if you deal with it the right way, that is going to be good for you, because you're going to be either patient over some sadness, and God's going to reward you. And if you get something really good, you're going to be grateful, and God's going to reward you. So when you have something that's really a genuinely bad thing, that's not good for your next life, and that's taking away from your ability to do good, that is something that comes from yourself. So Dawood knew, because he was humble, that even his ability to thank Allah for his blessings was something Allah gave him that he just didn't dispense with. So even in his even in his deep gratitude, he never felt self-amazement to think, "Oh, I'm thanking Allah, I'm praying, worshipping so much, one third of the night, the most beloved prayer to Allah, fasting every other day, the most beloved fast to Allah." All this love and gratitude he was showing Allah, even that he did not feel self-amazement, and that was due to his humility and his wisdom, that he understood that God gave him this, and that these good things came from God. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam also said that there is an angel, and when you show humility, Allah says the angel increase him in wisdom, and when you show arrogance, Allah says the angel decrease him in wisdom, increase him in foolishness, basically. So Dawood was wise and great, and it showed in his gratitude. There's something in the Bible, actually, it says the beginning of wisdom is to fear the Lord. It's the beginning. The first thing a wise person does is they're not like Nimrod. They actually at least fear God. That's the very beginning of wisdom. The end of wisdom is when you become so aware of how much, because God said in the Quran, if you could count the favors of Allah, you could never count them. You understand that God does so much more for you than you deserve, and you become very grateful and humble, and you understand that you are not entitled to things, and then you start seeing Allah for who He is, a generous Lord who gives without return. And that is something that you start to feel deeply grateful to Allah for. When you understand Allah, and when you humble yourself, and you lose your self-entitlement and self-amazement, and you understand who Allah is, you will be grateful to Him for what He does for you. And in turn, that means who He is, because He does things because of who He is. He's generous, He's kind. So you will have gratitude and love, and when you, at the end of that wisdom, you come, as well as the fear of God, which is the beginning. The beginning is just to know, okay, I shouldn't mess with the Creator of everything. That's just common sense. Someone should understand that, if they have any sense. But the end of it is to know that God never takes away your right from you. He will never violate your rights, because you have a right as human. He doesn't take it away from you, and God gives you more than you deserve. Whether it appears that way or not, if you deal with the situations the right way, you're going to get something better out of it. And that's the humility that you have, that even the good things you do, you are grateful to God for them. And that humility and wisdom that exalts you, and that gives you the ability to gain more. And that's why Dawood, who was a humble man and a wise man who did everything for Allah and even continued to thank Allah for the fact that he could thank Him, he was so understanding of his where the blessings were coming from. Dawood was remembered in history as a king, as a warrior, as a very manly man who basically, who worked with his own hands and made money with his own hand, ate from what his own hands earned, worshipped devoutly, was a strong, very kind of an immense figure in Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. A very immense figure. He had his slips. I mean, there was a moment. I'm not going to get too much into it. It's in the Bible, in the Quran. It alludes to it about him with being with slipping and having and doing something ignorant and being and fornicating with someone. The Quran alludes to it. It doesn't necessarily state it, so I don't know if this is true in the Islamic sense, but he wasn't perfect, but he was remembered in an exalted way, and God forgave him. Either way, we know that's acknowledged in Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. He was forgiven, and he is remembered in a very exalted way because of his wisdom. So and the thing is, if you can just keep humbling yourself and just keep letting go of your ego, and you can keep yourself wise and keep discerning and making good decisions, calculating things correctly, you will be protected from everything. Because no matter what trial or what guidance comes to you, if you are humble enough and wise enough to make the good decisions, then you're not going to be, that trial won't destroy you and it will benefit you. So if you are a person who is wise, wisdom is encompassing. It covers, it makes you patient, it makes you grateful, it makes you able to evaluate situations. You will protect yourself from all kinds of calamities by being wise, and being humble is the key to being wise. If you are humble, if you can just keep it out of your head that you deserve something that you're not getting, and you can remember that you're always getting more than you deserve, and that you owe a debt, and you can cure your heart from diseases, you will be very grateful to God. You will love God very much, and you will, inshallah, you will be able to, you will be able to navigate all the trials through patience and everything will be for your benefit. However, if you have a little bit of arrogance in your heart, or a little bit of foolishness where you are self-deluded, a trial might come or something might hit you that you are not able to deal with correctly, and it may cause you to slip and lose everything. And how do I put this? If you understand the right of Allah upon you, and you understand there is a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it talked about the right of Allah over the slave and the slave's right over Allah. And it said the right of Allah over his slave is that you should not worship anything except Allah, and the right of the slave over Allah is that Allah should not punish him. So that means if you keep Allah's right, meaning that you do not worship anything besides Him, and to worship is to put something first. So you live your life putting nothing before Allah, meaning that you might slip and make mistakes, but you are truly devoted to Allah, and you put Allah above everything. Nothing takes that place, and when Allah tells you to abstain from something because it will destroy you, you avoid it to the best of your ability. And you never take people's rights from them. People have rights over each other, and people have rights as human beings. If you don't take someone's right from them, and that's to be an oppressor, is to take someone's right from them, to become a wrongdoer and an oppressor. If you're never a wrongdoer and you never take someone's right, and you never take Allah's right from Him, and you put Him first and you obey His commands, then the only thing, if you do that perfectly, that you're entitled to is not being punished. That's it. All that Allah owes you, if you do that, is that He won't punish you. And so if you get afflicted with any suffering, and you've kept your integrity, then just know that if you can deal with it the right way, there's good in it. And also, you don't deserve, if you're willing, so many people wrong each other, and we forgive each other. Allah never wrongs you. Allah never does something you don't never takes your right from you. He just tests you And you'll never feel entitled. You know that your rights not being taken away, so you don't have a right to be upset with Allah. You just need to be patient. Allah will recompense everything for you that you suffered of injustice from others with good, and everything that you suffered has a reward if you are deal with it the right way. And you will never, you'll never feel like you're being wronged by Allah, and then you'll never feel entitled to snap back or to do something that violates His rights. And that lack of entitlement that you have, that you understand, like understanding that Allah doesn't do injustice, and that you don't deserve better than what He's giving you. You can be the best. The best story is for me one of the most important stories in the whole Quran is the story of Ayub or Job. The idea was that this was the best man on the earth at his time. He did everything right, and he got afflicted with a calamity more severe than what anyone got afflicted with. He had the worst calamity, and he was the best man, meaning he did everything right, and Allah exercised His rights over him, even though he was being easier on people who did less than him, and He exercised His right, and He took away everything from this man, and he lost his health, his family, everything, and people were telling him, this is happening to you because you did something wrong, and I didn't do anything wrong, and he's having to be patient and keep his integrity in spite of that, and he kept his integrity, and God from His mercy, if you keep your integrity, you're definitely going to go to heaven. God's not going to punish you, and from His mercy, He's going to put you in heaven. So there's a guarantee that if you keep your integrity, you have heaven waiting. But from God's mercy, He gave him twice as much as he lost back, and gave him a very good life at the end of his life, and in the next life, he's from amongst the righteous people, and he's in heaven. And God, Allah is ultimately kind and generous. So if you have the correct thought of Allah, you just take whatever test you're going to get, and inshallah you can hope that there's a good response from it, because God does more for people than they deserve. Even if He exercises many of His rights over you, Allah said in the Quran, if you could count the favors of Allah, you can never try. You can never count them, and Allah is so generous to you. So if you know that, like Ayub knew his right wasn't being taken away, and know how much he suffered, he didn't violate his integrity, and he didn't disobey God, then he had a good remembrance, and that as a patient man, he had a good life at the end of life, and he had heaven afterwards. But as long as you understand that you're not entitled to something, then you're gonna be able to calm down and relax, and just understand that this is from God, and you have to deal with it, and you have to be patient, and you have to be grateful in spite of all situations. Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he was in a bad situation, he said, Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal. Praise be to Allah under all circumstances. There is never a circumstance you are in except that you still owe Allah for gratitude that it is not worse while you are alive. So that's it. If you don't, is the key to wisdom is to be humble and to know that Allah doesn't do injustice. And if you always have that in your head, that you are humble and I don't deserve better, and being grateful for what you have, and even when you do good things, you understand that's a good thing from Allah, and you thank Him even more for it, and you don't let that get to your head and make you feel like you deserve something. That humility and wisdom has the potential to take you very far, and it protects you from all kinds of suffering. And if you are a fool, or you even have a little bit of arrogance in you, and somewhere deep down you think you're not getting your fair share, then man, you are in danger of getting caught slipping, and just losing to your emotions, and acting out in a way that can hurt you, and maybe getting weak because you feel like I deserve a break. And that arrogance and that foolishness, that lack of discernment, that has the potential to hurt you so much. And the thing I want to talk about is also in Canada where I live. I mean, life is it's not that bad. I've had some bad times the last few years, but I mean, the bad in comparison, I mean, you're eating every day, you're drinking water, you're not worried a bomb's gonna fall on your house. It's not like it is in Gaza right now. People there are really suffering, and Allah still expects them to keep up their worship and be good Muslims, even though they're being tested with extreme patience. And that is something so hard, and inshallah they will be rewarded with a very good reward for their patience. But us, I mean, as a Muslim living in a country like this, It's easy to live halal. I mean, if you are not obeying the limits of Allah in this situation where you have health and money and available food, and you're not in a state of fear, God is not testing you with constant fear, and you can't even just eat halal food and give some charity and do some prayers and do a little bit, the little good that's expected from you, and exercise a little bit of gratitude, then what did you have to really question what your Islam is? Because I'm not saying people should leave Islam because of sins. I'm just saying that if you, even if you're sinning, even if you're like a really just generally not a determined person, Islam is the connection between you and Allah, and you shouldn't sacrifice that because there's hope with that. But if you're in this situation, you should have a high regard, like a high a high expectation of yourself, that you should be at least just doing good and avoiding major sins in this situation, and not taking advantage, and not drinking alcohol, and not sleeping with women, and not gossiping, and doing things that you can avoid if you can just be grateful and understand there are people who have suffered so much in this world. And there are people in the past, the Sahaba and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they had to endure like severe situations, and they still had to worship and obey and live a good life. So you and me, what is our jihad? What is our struggle for this deen? At the least, just live halal in your easy situation, and don't transgress the limits of Allah while things are easy, because that's the bare minimum a Muslim can do. And if you can't do that, then you have to really question yourself about your sincerity, because I mean, yeah, there's not a lot to be said for someone who can't even in this kind of ease just control their impulses. You have to really look inside and purify yourself, and really look at the way you're doing things. Because yeah, if you can't be great, if you can't even be a little bit grateful to where you'll abstain from bad things and do your worship in a situation like this, then that's a big issue. I'm not saying you lose hope in the mercy of Allah. Allah is so merciful, and there's hope as long as you believe in Him, and you are a Muslim, and you're a person who bears witness to the truth, and you are establishing worship. You shouldn't despair, but still it's a big issue if you have that kind of weakness and lack of determination, that kind of lack of gratitude. That's a really big disease of the heart to have, that you can't, even when people are being bombs dropped on them and they're still obeying Allah, and you with all this peace can't even do the bare minimum. It's ridiculous. So yeah, and more or less the things that the general principle is that wisdom, though, is something that is encompassing, and knowledge, gaining beneficial knowledge, I mean, whether it be in your fields or whatever, you like in a field of medicine or whatever, is great. But Islamic knowledge of the deen, knowledge of the way the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to make dua, knowledge of the prayer, knowledge of certain acts of worship, these things can protect you from calamities that could require more wisdom and more humility from you than you have. So if you have enough knowledge, and you know how to seek refuge, and how to ask Allah, and how to keep your worship up, it's not a guarantee, but there's a chance that you can divert yourself from a lot of calamities that would have required more out of you. So if you have wisdom, if your wisdom is perfect, and your humility is perfect, and your heart is pure, inshallah, you're fine. You're not gonna, no matter what happens to you, you're never gonna snap, as long as you keep yourself in that state, and you keep on, humbling yourself, and stay determined. But you can spare yourself a lot of difficulty by having the correct Islamic knowledge, and knowing the halal and the haram, and knowing what to ask for, and how to ask for, and how to protect yourself in the mornings and in the evenings, before you go to bed, when you pray, things that you can say, and that avert from you a lot of suffering and calamities that could come your way. But ultimately, you want to be safe, and because no one can compel Allah. That's impossible. You can ask, and there's hope that He'll answer, but no one can make Allah do anything. So if Allah wants to test you with something, no matter what, you're never safe unless your Islam is perfect. Unless your humility and your wisdom is perfect, you are never in a state of true safety. So knowledge protects you, and it can protect you from calamities, but wisdom is encompassing. It'll make you patient, it'll make you thankful, it'll do everything for you if you can have the correct determination. But there's something that Just because you have that doesn't mean you should be challenging the world, asking for calamities to increase your rank. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he saw a man once, and he in a narration, he saw a man, he was asking, "Oh Allah, give me patience. Oh Allah, give me patience." And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, "You do not ask for patience. You are asking Allah to make things difficult for you. Ask Allah al-afiyah, for well-being. You should be asking, because you having that's too much. If you're so confident that you can endure whatever Allah throws at you, because you will get a better reward if you deal with patience. If you deal with those really severe tests, there's more rewards in the hereafter, but there's also a chance that you could lose, something could change in your heart, or you have a weakness. It could be exposed. You could turn away from your religion. You could become a wrongdoer, and you can end up in hell because a trial was too severe and you just didn't deal with it the right way. So to protect yourself and to be safe, you're going to go to heaven if you keep your integrity. Ask Allah to make it easy for you in this life and the hereafter. That's a wise thing to do, to not overestimate yourself. So asking Allah for al-afiyah, for well-being, ask Allah to forgive you, ask Allah to give you well-being in your health, in your religion, in your mind, in your work, so that you're living a peaceful life, and then the hereafter you're gonna have afiyah too in heaven, because you lived good and it wasn't too bad for you. That is the thing that is the safe way to go and to ask for. I think there's a hadith, I don't remember it exactly. It said, blessed is the one who is thankful and who is tested with good things and is thankful. And excellent is the one who is tested with calamities and is patient. So if you can just get an easy way to heaven and you can just thank Allah through your good things, then no problem. I mean, that's you're blessed. You were spared something that could turn you away from your religion. Maybe you were spared that, and and you should be, to be safe, you have to have a perfect sincerity in Islam, so that it doesn't matter what happens, you're safe. But being spared those kind of situations where you really have to tucker down and be solid is a blessing. And if you get afflicted by those calamities, which you shouldn't be asking for no matter what, but you do get afflicted with the most severe situations, if your Islam is perfect and your patience is perfect and your wisdom is complete and you understand, you're humble, you have no arrogance in you, inshallah, then it'll benefit you anyways. This is, I think, one of the most important things. You save yourself a lot of trouble just by humbling yourself. And part of wisdom is humility. Humility is the anchor of wisdom. But the thing that really, another part of it is just having forbearance and the ability to take a step back and really calculate things correctly. Humility is a prerequisite. You need it, because if you don't have it, you're going to be lying to yourself and you're never going to be able to see truth, even if you have all the intelligence and the wits and the patience, because you're living a lie in your head and you're messed up. Another part of it is to be discerning. It's to not be hasty. It's to take a step back when you feel like doing something or you feel inclined to something, and being calm enough to cool your mind and not be hasty and forbear and think whether it's right for you and whether this has benefit for you or not, what you're going to do. And the ultimate thing of foolishness is to do something that does not benefit you with only because your emotions tell you to do it. When you have an emotional feeling and you feel like, oh, I feel something and I have to do this, and it has no benefit, it only harms you, it doesn't benefit you, but just because you're so inclined towards it, you do it. That's a deep level of foolishness, and it's pointless. It's just you make a decision in a moment and it hurts you and it has no benefit for you. The other levels of it are, making discerning things and choosing what's better from the two things and not letting your soul be attached to some desire. That's harder. But the basic thing that someone can do is not be led to do something that just harms them and doesn't benefit them, because they're angry for a moment, or they're feeling weak in the knees for a moment, they're scared, or they're feeling lustful. Like this is something that, like, when you, like, if you're really personally, I have a big problem with this, and that's why I never tell people I'm a wise man. I'm a dude who understands what wisdom is, but I'm not really particularly wise myself, because I get very angry sometimes. And when you get really angry and you can't like one of the best things a person can do is just stop themselves from getting angry as much as they can, because if you are able to not get angry, like you will think clearly all the time. All anger does is it clouds your judgment. And if you, in those moments where you're enraged, you could be ready to do something so stupid because of your emotions, and you will not be able to discern that this doesn't have benefit for you. So to be able to keep yourself calm is another thing that's important to wisdom. Being hot-headed and easy to be angered, easily enraged, is something that is, it's not wise, and it's not, yeah, it's being quick to anger is something that is a big problem, to be honest with you. So yeah, that's a big thing. Another thing is lust, man. If now here's the thing, people, they also overestimate themselves with this. Like, might come from maybe not experiencing it and overestimating. When you end up in a situation, like if you're a Muslim, you understand there are some things that are big sins, like zina, having sex out of marriage, is a huge issue in Islam. It's a huge sin. It's a big issue in this part of the world for men, and it's a big test. And if you understand how weak you are as a man, how really weak you are, then you will be able to, like, you will be able to avoid this, because you could be completely full of piety and yaqeen, certainty of Allah and fear of Allah, and understanding that you have a meeting with God, and there's heaven and there's hell and all this, and you can have full certainty of this. And if you end up allowing yourself, because of that, to engage a little bit too much with a woman and end up to where you're spending time alone with her in a private setting, and you overestimate your ability, like, no, I'm not gonna fall into that trap. There's no way. I can't get. I fear Allah too much. I have to. That is not true. When you are alone with a woman, alone, your brain doesn't work. If she puts on a little bit of flirtatiousness and gets a little bit close to you, the moment you get a whiff of that smell off of her, and you can kind of feel that heat, your mind is not gonna work like it doesn't work. It doesn't work normally. You turn into a retard. So basically, the Prophet Muhammad said, when a man and a woman are alone together, then, and they're not mahram, they're not like married or a sister and brother, the shaitan is the third one with them. And it's a reality. You have to really, be aware that the shaitan, he come when you're in that situation, when you're alone with a woman like that. It doesn't matter how much piety you have, you are not built like that. No one is built like that. You end up in that situation, your brain is not going to work correctly at that moment. So the best thing to do is to avoid that situation altogether, and try to find a better way of seeking a wife if that's what you're doing. And it definitely not to do it for leisure and fun, to spend time alone with women, because if you're alone and that situation is just dangerous altogether. It doesn't matter how much piety you have, it's dangerous. And I was gonna say something else, just I need to think. I've lost it. It's okay. Yeah, being alone with a woman is a really big issue, and it's something that men just are not. You're not. The best thing you can do really is try to get married quickly if you can, when you're younger, and when the option becomes available to get married, so you have a way to deal with your urges in a halal way, and you avoid that kind of danger, because being alone with a woman in this society, it happens. You can't avoid it. So those are two situations to be really careful in. One, when you get really angry, and the other one when a woman is trying to seduce you, because your mind, it doesn't work. It doesn't work in that situation. The best thing to do is not overestimate yourself, and keep to your worship and keep to your good deeds, and seek a wife however you seek her in a halal way, but avoid being in a situation where you're alone with a woman who's not lawful to you, because it's crazy how scary that is. You can end up doing a sin that could take. And here's something else that people should know. There is something called rizq, provision, something that Allah has for you, that is gonna come to you. That Allah has set a provision for people, and it's coming to them. Their work they do. If they live a good enough life, they're gonna do the work to earn it. It's gonna come to them. However, it's gonna come to them. The only thing that stops provision from reaching you is sins. So Allah might have something for you, and because you are not righteous and you are not living good and you are engaging in sins, you will either delay that provision that was coming to you, or you will miss it completely. And that's a big disaster. And sin is the issue for that. If you can't, and that's one of the biggest one is zina, sex with a woman outside of marriage. If you get caught doing this, if this happens to you, you could end up having, maybe Allah had a halal wife for you who was going to be very good for you, but because you were hasty, then you ended up getting something else and missing that good provision that was coming for you. So understanding that if you just live halal and righteous, and I'm not sure if laziness is considered a sin or not, but I think it probably would be. So also you're not a lazy person, and you're willing to do work when you have to. And it is a sin in a sense, because if you're lazy, you're not even going to be worshipping enough. So if you have the correct determination and you aren't lazy and you don't do sins, inshallah, your provision, it's going to reach you either way. Whether you think it is or not, it's coming. Whatever Allah has for you. But if you engage in sins, drinking alcohol, doing fornication, gossiping about people, hurting people, any of this stuff, like this kind of, or eating non-halal food, or any kind of harm, or harming, hurting people, harming people with your tongue or with your hands. Maybe you're a violent person, you get into fights and hurt people. Maybe you're a person who likes to gossip about people. Maybe you're a very offensive person who, when you talk to people, you put them down and you kind of exalt yourself over them, or you abuse them and make them feel bad. If you're harming people, or making unlawful money to a job that's not halal, or and dealing in interest is one of the biggest sins, or you're doing fornication, or you're drinking alcohol, or you're not eating halal, these things can prevent or you're not praying on time. These things can delay your provisions that are coming to you, and they can also stop it from coming. So you can get less than you would have. If you're worried about the next life and this life, you should know that sins prevent both from you. They prevent this life and the next life. And there's nothing wrong with asking for good things in this life. Having good in the world and good in the hereafter is something that everyone should hope for. We need the hereafter. The next life is everything. That you end up in heaven forever, and that you avoid hellfire is the ultimate attainment. But in general, the thing that is advised in the Quran for people to ask for is to pray for good in this life and in the hereafter. So it's good to seek what's in this life, but don't let it be in your heart too much. You seek it, you try to gain it in your hands, but if you have this life and you have an attachment to something and it gets taken away, it can also make you turn away from your religion. Your ultimate goal is the hereafter, so no matter what happens to you, praise Allah in spite of it. Inshallah, Allah will give you good here, and inshallah you will have good in the hereafter. Just don't be too attached to what you have and what you don't have in this life, because if you do, an attachment to something in this life can lead you away from your devotion to Allah. You might have a conditional Islam, like, if Allah keeps a roof over my head, I will continue to pray, I will continue to be a Muslim. But if Allah takes away my house, then I'm gonna turn away. It's conditional Islam. Your Islam has to be perfect. It has to be unconditional. You have to be willing to worship Allah through the worst and the best of times. And inshallah, if you can prove yourself sincere, inshallah, you're going to get this life too. It's very hopeful. Allah said, Allah, if you look at the stories of the prophets, they, in general, whatever they had to suffer through, when they proved themselves to be truly sincere and they committed to the cause 100%, they got more than they lost back afterwards, or as much, and they they had a good end to their life in the life and in the hereafter. So pass the tests and have a positive thinking, and don't be too attached to anything, because this world is a place of testing and trials, and it's also a place of enjoyment, but also a place of testing and trials. And if you can't get too obsessed with things. Alhamdulillah, thank you for listening. I hope you all took something from this. Like I said, I'm not really a wise person. I'm just someone who, through some spiritual experiences and through, some Islamic studies and through some life experiences that are, just doing stupid things, I learned some things, and I know what wisdom is, kind of, and I don't really consider myself to be a wise or very pious person, but hopefully this benefited the people listening. Assalamu alaikum and bye bye.